Hey everybody, this is Hake Hardware, and in this video we are going to go over how to install Nextcloud on Proxmox using the VE helper scripts for Nextcloud. So if you're not familiar, there is a really cool website, Proxmox VE helper scripts, and there are tons of different scripts here. You can see like different operating systems. We have Nextcloud here. There are all sorts of different scripts available, and what's cool about these is you can basically just copy and paste the script command into your shell in Proxmox, and it will walk you through the installation, setting up the VM, or if it's a container, setting up the LXC, and it can make it a lot easier if you don't want to go through the whole rigmarole of doing it yourself. For Nextcloud, this script is using Turnkey Linux for Nextcloud, and you can do the installation pretty quickly just with creating the VM yourself and installing Turnkey Linux. I'm going to have a separate video for that if you want to do it manually. This basically does it the same exact thing, but a little bit more streamlined because we're going to be using this script. So I have a wiki here. This will be linked in the description if you want to follow along with the text, and there's maybe some commands, not too many commands um, in this guide, but or other videos, you can copy paste the commands from here. But let's jump right into it. So in Proxmox, sorry, I know it's bright, top right here, you're going to select the shell, and that is going to open up something like this. And I'm just going to keep this in the bottom left corner here. We don't really need to be in Proxmox almost at all because the script is going to do most of the work for us. And so head over to the Proxmox VE helper scripts, copy the command, and then in your shell, you're going to do Control-Shift-V to paste and just hit enter. And that's going to start the install script. So we'll do yes to create a new turnkey Nextcloud VM. And then you could probably get away with the default settings. I prefer to use advanced settings and increase the RAM. CPU is probably fine with 2 virtual CPUs, but really the RAM, I think the default's only 2 GB, and I would recommend at least 4. So we're going to go with advanced. You can update the virtual machine ID if you want to use something different. I usually just leave it as default. For machine type, if you have newer hardware, I recommend using Q35. There's just a few extra features. So we'll click OK. This one again is kind of like a decision that you can make. Default is fine right through. It's a little slower. Your disk is going to be a little slower, but there's less of a chance of data loss. I'm just going to use the default. I'm just going to leave the host name as Turnkey Nextcloud VM. And then I always prefer host for my CPU model. I don't know if there's any downside to it. I think there's only upside, which is you get like the full feature set of your CPU. I'm going to click OK. And then 2 CPU cores is probably fine. If you can manage it, maybe 4. You don't really need to go much higher than that unless you're doing like something crazy with it. So I'm just going to click OK. For RAM, I'm going to do 4096. I honestly think that's like the minimum that you should use. Click OK. I'm just going to use the default bridge. I'm going to use the default MAC. I don't need a VLAN. I don't need an interface MTU size. And those are things where if you need to do it, you know what you're supposed to put there. So for most people, it's just going to be blank. And then I'm going to choose no because I want to resize my disk. By default, as you can see up here, the hard drive size is 12 GB. I'm just going to bump that up to 20. So I'm going to click no and then yes to create it. So the script's pretty cool. It's going to go through. You can see all the different settings that we set. It's going to have to download the Turnkey Linux Nextcloud ISO. And then what it's going to do is there's going to be 2 disks that are going to be mounted to this virtual machine. One is going to be 800 megabytes. That is going to be the installation media that is going to be set as the primary boot drive. And the first time we boot into this virtual machine, that is going to load. And then there's going to be a second disk, which is going to be 12 GB, and that's going to be where the operating system is going to be installed. What we're going to do before we jump into starting this virtual machine and getting everything set up is to actually increase the size of the drive. So where Nextcloud is going to be installed. So this should be getting created pretty soon. All right, let's jump over to, we can actually get out of this. We won't need that again. And for our steps here, I'm just going to jump down. We did all of this. And what we're going to do now is go in and resize that disk. So you can see kind of the actions I'm going to be taking here. So we're going to jump in. This is our new instance here, Turnkey Nextcloud VM. We're going to go to hardware. Then we're going to go to SCSI 0, which is going to be the 12G is what you should see. I don't know if I can get this a little bit bigger here. 12G. And we're going to do disk action, resize, and resize increment. So I want to add 8 gigabytes because that will make it 20. So resize disk, 20. Now we can go ahead and start this. So if you right click, you can do start or click it and then click start up here, or you can go into the console and there'll be a start now button. And this will boot up Turnkey Linux, and we're going to just click enter to install to disk. So going back to our steps here, there's that start now button, install to disk, and you should see as soon as it pops up, there's going to be an option here that we're going to select. So we're going to use guided, and I know this is really hard to read, so you might want to look at the wiki if you can't see some of this, but basically we're using the option for guided, use entire disk, and set up LVM. So I'm just going to press enter. And here you want to make sure you select the correct drive. You do not want the hard drive that's 800 megabytes. You want the one that's 20 or 12 if you didn't update that. It's typically going to be SDA. So I'm going to select that and click tab to go down to OK. And then just tab over to yes or use the arrow keys and hit enter to write the changes to the disk. Here we're going to delete 90% and put max, which means we're just going to use the entire 21.5 gigabyte partition. Click tab to go down to OK and hit enter. And the installation is pretty quick. We'll just click yes to write the changes to the disk. Jumping back over to our wiki here, we are now down to the step down here. All right, once the data has been copied, we're going to install GRUB. So I've had issues with this using the helper script. So I typically click no here, and it's going to allow you to select the disk. So click no, and then make sure you select that SDA, not SDA1. That'll be the volume group. You'll just want to do SDA and press tab to go down and click OK. That will install GRUB for your operating system drive. It's going to remove some of the live packages, and then we'll be able to reboot once everything is finished. But we're going to have to do a few steps before we actually get into Nextcloud. So we'll just wait for this to finish up. Okay, we're going to click reboot the system, but we're actually probably going to end up having to shut it down or stop it because we are going to so just click enter here. It's going to prompt you to remove any live media. And what we're going to need to do is actually just right click and shut or stop. This will be better. And you just click yes. And that'll turn off the VM. We can go into hardware and we need to remove this installation media. You could just set under options the boot order to be SCSI 0 first, but we don't need the installation media anymore. So come into hardware and then make sure you're selecting the 800M. Click detach, yes. And now that installation media is gone. We don't need it anymore. We have an unused disk down here. We can just remove it and click yes. So that we got that size, that data back basically. And then we can go back into the console and just click start now and you're going to see it's going to boot right up into our Nextcloud instance. So Debian is what it's installed on, and we're going to boot into Turnkey Linux, and we'll be able to see Nextcloud is basically installed at this point. So there's going to be a few things we're going to need to do, like setting the IP address, so, and all the passwords. So there's going to be a bunch of prompts for passwords. Make sure you know what these are. You're going to need them. Not all of them, like the database ones you probably don't need, but like the admin account and the root accounts, like you're going to need all those. Okay, and then for the domain, you're going to go to, you can click between these tabs here, but you're going to go to summary and find the IP address. So 192.168.6925 for me. I'll go back to the console. 192.168.69.25. That'll be the domain. Just click enter to apply. I'm going to skip. I don't need any API keys. For most people, you're not going to need these. And then I'm going to skip. Actually, I'm going to skip this because I don't have an email server that we're going to be setting up, so it's not going to be able to email me. Or actually, this might be like notifications from Turnkey Linux. Either way, my updates, I do it periodically. I don't need to give them my email, so I'll do skip. And then you do want to install the updates. So these are going to be the initial security updates. It's always good to get those installed right out of the box before we actually jump into Nextcloud. So if it's kind of confusing, maybe, but the operating system that's installed is Turnkey Linux. That has Nextcloud built into it already, and it's like Debian based. So there's an operating system. Typically, if you weren't going to use like a helper script, or you weren't going to use something like Turnkey Linux, you would actually install Nextcloud onto your operating system. In this case, it's already installed on the operating system. That's why it's like a Turnkey Linux, because it's already set to go for Nextcloud. They have a bunch of different things that you can use on Turnkey, not just Nextcloud. So it makes this process a little bit easier. I'll have a video on how to actually install it manually as well. So there's a bunch of different ways. I think you can even use Docker. So over the next few videos, I'm going to be exploring all the different ways you can install Nextcloud. And there's going to be videos on some post-installation steps that you should take. The wiki is actually already up. So post-install, there's going to be some things that you're going to want to do, like setting the maintenance window, repairing MIME types, setting up a user so you can SSH into it. You can check this guide out. The video won't be up for probably a couple more days, but there's going to be a lot more Proxmox and Nextcloud videos coming out soon. So these updates are finished. We can go ahead and click reboot. And just get logged back in here. Let's run back to the helper script here. We're going to be all the way at the bottom, basically. Yeah, that's basically it. So once we get logged back in here, we can actually go to the HTTPS URL. HTTPS 192.168.6925. And you're going to get this warning. That's because we're using HTTPS and the certificate isn't certified. So go to advanced and then accept the risk because it's a self-signed certificate, and you'll be able to log right in. So you'll use admin and then the password you set up during installation to log in. Did not want to log me in there for a second, but let's see. There we go. All right, and you're logged in. So there's going to be, you're probably going to want to go down to this post install and follow these instructions. We're going to basically do a lot of things that will make life a lot easier, and you're going to want to update Nextcloud as well. So there's going to be a bunch of updates. That's one of the downsides of using Turnkey Linux is if you go into your admin and administration settings, we're on version 27. The current version is 31, and they're incremental updates. So you can see the version is not maintained anymore, so you need to update. It's pretty easy to update and that's covered in the post install uh, wiki over here. So that's it for installing. It's pretty simple to get the VE helper scripts installed with Proxmox. Hopefully this video was helpful. I will eventually get some more videos up and I'll link them in a way like in these wikis so that it's a lot easier. As it stands right now, when you get down to the bottom, there will be a link to the post install steps, so you can just click those and then follow the steps. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully it was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.